Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another engaging session on Ask Me Anything. I am Arihant Kothari representing NASSCOM 10,000 Startups, India's largest startup ecosystem platform, an initiative of NASSCOM. And today we are doing this session with Intuit. Intuit, as you all know, is a popular name and behind softwares like QuickBook, TurboTax, and financial news like mint.com, and we are extremely privileged to have Mr. Muthuraj Thangavel from Intuit. He's a product leader who has conceptualized various new product and added innovations to mature products, to international fellowships to his credit, and US PTO patents. So his specializations include in building smart products using machine learning, hypothesis validation. And today's AMA session is designed for delight, achieving product market fit without writing a single line of code. So over to you, Muthu. So what will the way we'll structure this session is like Muthu will take us through some concepts and some insights on how to achieve design for delight using the best product market fit, and then last 5-10 minutes we can have for question and answers. So over to you, Muthu.
Myself, Muthuraj Thangavel. I'm leading customer retention and self-service experience for QuickBooks at Intuit. Previously, I had a decade of experience with SAP in building, launching, and enterprise products. Right. So happy to be with you all today, and glad to answer any of the questions that you may be having in the area. Right. So let's get into action. I would like to firstly start congratulating all of you because I know being part of startup is not easy. There are several struggles. It's a leap that you have taken, that you believed in a product idea, that you wanted to venture it out, right? So yeah, I mean, it's great that you have ventured in to pursue your passion, right? So it really takes passion to lead with the product that you have, and it takes agility and the authenticity that you bring in for the product that you are building, right? So an important aspect to be noted is that a startup is not a smaller version of a bigger company, right? So you are constrained on time and money, and that's an important aspect to be counted in any of the decisions that you are making, right? So as we go in, this may not be a new fact to you. Several of you have already seen, for example, what are some of the reasons why these startups are failing, right? So what is the real reason behind the startups to go out of business, right? So if you look at it, some of these reasons, you can see the primary reason being the market need not being validated. It is basically that the product is there, but the market need is not there, right? So that's where majority of the startups are failing to make the bound from where they are to where they want to go to, right? So if you look at it further, right? So 90% of mobile apps, if you look through, the Android Play Store or the iOS apps, 90% of mobile apps launched in the app stores are abandoned just after single use by the users. An average mobile app tends to lose somewhere around 77% of their active users just within 3 days of installation. Your value is only so much. They just found probably because of your promotion, because of the way the images were put in some or how it is shown in the Play Store. Customers are going in, and then they immediately realize that no, this is not something that is immediately solving my problem, or it is not something that is useful for me, or it is not solving a problem that is really urgent for me. Then that's it, you're gone. You are actually not your app is just getting abandoned by the user, right? Most of the time that actually comes down to just two key problems most of the time, right? Number one, are you solving the right problem? and number two, are you providing the right solution, right? So those are the two key things, the majority of the reason why the mobile apps are not able to, or the business is not able to succeed, not able to continue their momentum, right? Unfortunately, this is the stage in which many entrepreneurs get stuck right away, right? So because if you look at most of the cases, they actually start to build a full blown product with lots of features. Why is that happening, right? So basically, if you look at most of the coding languages, this is open source, it's available for free. So what is happening is a lot of entrepreneurs, when they just get that aha idea, they immediately start to think in terms of, okay, let me actually start to build it out. Let me just build the whole app with, right from the login to the set of full features that I think are the right solutions, which is going to solve the problem and change the world. And they start to build the whole thing and get it out to market, right? And that is when they really face the, after building it out, by spending loads of money, having more people join them to develop that, to build that, and then publish it in the Play Store, and then take it out to the market. And when the market is actually starting to download and use it, is when they are facing the reality. And then suddenly they are noticing, firstly, if the app is not even get noticed, or even if it gets noticed and users come in, most of the times the users are just abandoning the app within the first 3 days of usage, right? Now, let's start with a quote from a genius, right? So what has he said for it, right? So in one of his speeches, he was referring to basically, like, innovation actually comes from saying no to thousand things a week, because you keep getting ideas, right? So ideas is not your, let's say, the is your key to the key to unlock the world, right? It is basically your ability to find the right problem, and hence a creative solution around that problem together becomes that innovation. And that actually happens by actually being uncomfortably narrow in the things that you want to do, to make sure that you are delivering only the core value to the customers, not by bloating your app with thousands of features that nobody will end of the day use it, right? So are you saying are you saying no to all the other things to clearly prioritize only on where you want to focus, is the main thing that you have to make sure, only then you can be really, really successful, right? So let's see, for example, a couple of apps and how they solved this case, right? So number one, for example, if you look at Yahoo on the left hand side, Yahoo, when they started with their initial search engine, and it was one of the early search engine, and it was actually doing also a, let's say, a decent job in searching what you are looking for from the web, right? But then how was their page? How was Yahoo designed? So many things, so many different things that you had over there in the page, that you can just get lost in trying to do what you want to achieve, right? Versus Google, when they wanted to disrupt the world, all they wanted to go with is just the one search bar, and that's it, right? So when you're building your business, when you're wanting to go to the market, what is that? Do you want to be the, what is that one core thing that you can actually take to the market, and where can you start there from? Right. So that is the, let's say, the major important aspect that every company, every business these days looking to figure out the most critical value that you can deliver to your customers, and how can you deliver that fast to your customers, right? So every company has a way of how that can be done, and this is Intuit's secret sauce, right? What we call as a method called as design for delight is a framework actually built around design thinking. Design thinking, as you know, is an open source framework, right? So every company, every business can have an adaptation of design thinking, right? Such that you can build your the elements such that depending on the products and the services that you are building, you can have some elements built around the framework. Now, what Intuit has come up with very brilliantly here is the very simplified concept of the design thinking, having three core elements, and each of these elements is actually long enough, and it needs deep understanding to actually for you to get that right. So it actually starts with, for example, a deep customer empathy, rapid experiments. Deep customer empathy is how you identify your customers, who are the right customers, what are the problems that they have, what are some of the challenges that they are going through, why is that a challenge to be solved, is that problem important enough, is that problem is that something that you can solve for the customers with the skill sets that you hold, is that problem actually going to make you viable, will it give you that distinctive advantage but if you go ahead and solve that problem, right? So there's all those aspects around how can you build the product or the service around the customer's problems by deep rooted and connected with the customer is the deep customer empathy element, followed by go broad to go narrow, which is an element of, for example, how you can actually have the how you can make sure that you are not trying to solve every problem and every solution that you have arrived at in the brainstorming process. You're not trying to do everything, but then how are you able to, your ability and the methods to how can you make sure that you are selecting only the important elements and the prioritized items, and you are able to go uncomfortably narrow such that you are solving the right thing one at a time and incrementally able to build on it, right? And the third element is the rapid experiments. Every idea comes with a set of assumptions, and how are you able to rapidly do experiments to give that value, also to make sure that your assumption is proven right, such that you can make sure that you are actually building on the right set of things and not building on a bulk of assumptions that your business can crash any day, right? So that is the most important thing with the rapid experiment that you would have to follow. Cool. So let me go in. So today we will be focusing on primarily on the rapid experiments with customers. The third circle that you see here will be our major focus for today's session, right? So the whole aspect is a lot of details that you can go through, and that is for your end-to-end product development. But this session is very focused for you who are mostly coming from the early stage startups where you have identified the customer, the problem, the solution that you want to build, but you are at the stage of how you want to actually take your idea to the customers faster and cheaper and validate and incrementally build. And that is why we are actually concentrating on the rapid experiments with the customers, right? So how can you do that? Right, every company, every business idea has to start with their core value, right? So identify your core value, right? So for like how it was web search for Google, starting with just the books market for Amazon, starting with only the Harvard students, identify your primary set of customers and their major problem, and hence your primary value, what we call as a one persona, one problem, one promise at a time, right? So identifying that one critical group of customers for whom you want to solve that one specific problem with one core key value that you can deliver to make a difference, right? So start only there, right? And then when you have decided your promise, which is your core value that you are going to take to the customers, right now, you have to make sure that how you can take that value to the customers at the same time, by making sure that you are not building everything that is required, right? At the first place itself, even if it is core value, we don't want to build you the complete core value with the end-to-end functionality, right? Making sure the complete journey of the customer is taken care for that, even if it is that one core value. Building that end-to-end functionality, making sure of all the other product standards around that, all of those things are not coming at the first when you are trying to deliver something, right? So what can you do to rapidly iterate on the core value, and such that you can bring that fast enough to the customers, and at the same time that can help you to validate the assumptions and keep moving faster and build incrementally, right? So that is where we have to all realize that every idea has a set of assumptions. If you say that your idea does not have an assumption, that's not true. Every solution that you think about, every idea that you think about that can potentially solve a problem has an assumption, right? It is important for you to recognize that you have assumptions, and there are a set of assumptions, and hence identify the important assumptions without which your idea will fail, and validate that with fast enough experiments, right? So that is why it is very important to identifying the assumptions. So we already made the premise that without going into the details of the full end-to-end picture of the product, we already made sure that the two rings are at the overview level covered, and at this stage, for example, you have already identified the persona whom you want to concentrate on. What are some of their immediate problems, and hence what is the idea that you are thinking that you can go ahead and solve for your customers, right? So making sure that these things are taken care is the first thing that we is the premise that we arrived at, right? Now when we say that this core value has to be taken to the customers, we are now, as a next step, looking at this core value. What are the assumptions behind these core values? Okay, so we are going to take the Airbnb idea, and we are going to look at, for example, what are some of the assumptions that Airbnb had when they had to go ahead to build this product and take it to the market to come to such a level today where they are, that they are the largest hotel chain now without even actually owning the hotel, right? So how is that possible, and where did they start from, and what were some of the assumptions that they had when they were beginning with this model, right? So here you can see a set of assumptions that Airbnb would have had when they had to start with their the product idea, right? So now what I want to make sure at this point is it's actually a quiz for the participants. Go through these 7 assumptions that you are seeing in the screen. I want you to identify what are some of the critical assumptions or a leap of faith assumption. A leap of faith assumption or a loafer is nothing but, if that is not proven right, your business will completely topple, right? So you cannot build a model for actually connecting a platform for actually connecting the consumers with those who are willing to provide the room, and build a business around it. Everything will collapse if those assumptions are not taken care. So that is a critical assumption or a leap of faith assumption that you have to identify. Firstly, you have to recognize that every idea has a set of assumptions, write them down, and then identify what are those leap of faith assumptions that you have to validate before going and building your idea, and then such that you can take only that, and then you can incrementally build on from there. Okay, so I want you to use the chat screen to answer for me. You have to identify 2 loafers, right? Just put the numbers, it's enough, right? For example, if you believe 1 and 3 are loafers, you can say number 1 and number 2 from your perspective. So I'm gonna watch at the chat on what your thoughts are. Let's see. I'm asking all the participants to put in your perception. What is that loafer that you think? 2, I want from each of you to identify two. So I see 2 and 5. I see 1 and 5. A lot of you are saying 1 and 5. 2 and 7. Interesting. 1 and 7. Okay, go on. Cool. Okay. So let's look at the answers now. Thanks a lot for bringing in your perspective, everyone. So let's look at your the answers here, right? So the assumptions and how you can actually qualify that assumption, whether that is a lofa or not, whether that is something validated or not, right? So a lot of you had told one, right? So when you said the accommodations they are unfamiliar with, here it's not the accommodating person we are talking about. We are talking about the accommodation itself, a place where you can go and stay. A place where you can go and stay is actually had been unfamiliar even with the hotel rooms that you had to book. So I'm booking a hotel in a place where I'm traveling for the first time, so that is still perfectly fine at that point in time when Airbnb had to come up with their model, right? Now, if you look at the number two, people will rent an airbed at a stranger's home. That is completely new, right? And if that is not proven, if the founders had went ahead with the assumptions, if in internet, customers can actually go and already book a room and stay there. Why not, if by offering a room instead of at hotel, by if someone else is sharing his home, that is going to be cheaper. So if there is a cheaper room available, the customers are going to book it directly. If you had taken that assumption, right, instead of going to a famous hotel chain, if the people who are staying in that local area, they are offering their bed, it will be cheaper, and hence the customers will go there. It's an assumption. You would have terribly failed there because you are already taking a leap of faith assumption there, which means that that place where you mentioned, that home that you mentioned, is actually a stranger for me. It's not a brand. It's not a hotel, right? So there will be already a fear that is coming into my mind, right? And then if you look at legal, a lot of you had mentioned legal, for example. But if you look at the legal aspect, it is already illegal to have roommates in most of the countries, right? It is basically you are just saying that you can, where you are staying, you are sharing that place with another person, right? So that is, it is not legal in all places, but it is legal in most places, right? And that is something they believed, for example, that can be solved also later on, right? So that is why the most important or the core assumptions when you had to start with is the whole thing around the stranger, how that problem can be solved, right? So how can you do this exercise for your business, right? The leap of faith assumptions. The very first thing that you have to do is identify your core element that you want to offer to your customers, and hence for that core value, list down your set of assumptions. Now you have your set of assumptions. How can you classify which are those critical assumptions without which your business will fail? If you have not done this exercise for your business yet, I would highly recommend to go ahead and do this, no later than 2 days from this session, because we all know that anything that you learn in a day, within 2 days, if you do not act upon it, then probably you may never act upon it, right? So take this weekend as your leap, to go ahead and list your assumptions and find your leap of faith assumptions, right? So this is a 2 by 2 over here, on the cruciality for success versus whether it is proven already in the market or not proven in the market, right? And then anything that falls in the top right quadrant, some assumptions that are crucial for your business success and not yet proven in the market, you have to really be aware of it. You have to take them, you have to go behind them, do experiments and prove that this is true, right? Only then you can actually go and build upon it, right? So that is very important over here. Right, so we are going to see next what are some of those rapid experiments that you can do with your customers such that you can actually prove the value, and you can incrementally build your product instead of building a full-fledged one with a lot of features at the first shot. How can you prove the incremental value and you can build on top of it, and why you have to do those experiments? Now at this stage you have identified assumption, right? You know that there are assumptions behind the product idea that you have taken, and these assumptions have to be proven. But now, why do you have to run the experiment? Because if you are sitting in your room, and now with the lockdown it is all that your home office, right? By just sitting inside your wherever you will never be able to prove whether this assumption can be taken for granted, can help you succeed or not. You have to go out and run an experiment for it, and that's why experiments are very important, right? Why do we run experiments, right? So that's where we started from. You have to learn from customers as quickly as possible, right? The word rapid here is very important. You have to test your all your assumptions, mainly the critical or the low force or the leap of faith assumptions. You have to prove out the real customer behavior and make sure that you are making better decisions based on the result. That is the key when you are running these experiments, right? Now, how can you do that? Right, that's where we bring in hypothesis statement, right? So basically, you started with your customer, you identified their problems, you came up with your ideas, the creative ways of how you can solve it. You went uncomfortably narrow to select the core value that you want to start with. Now that core value, you went on to list the assumptions behind that core value. Now these assumptions, like for example, whether a stranger will rent their bed or not, is not something that you can directly test. You have to transform into what we call as an hypothesis statement, such that you can actually transform these assumptions, make these into something measurable, and test it such that you can learn from it, right? This is a template. All the black and highlighted word is a template, and the what you see in the blue font is an example that is that we discussed around Airbnb, that is filled in. You can have a screenshot of this page, for example. Use this, and once you do your LOFA exercise with the 2 by 2, remember that we talked about. Once you do this, and once you identify what is your top right quadrant, for those assumptions, go and fill these hypotheses, right? If you do what, and hence what will be the customer behavior for that, which can be measured by what, it is very important that you should be, every experiment, everything that you do to validate an assumption should be measurable, which should be measured by what. For example, if you create a landing page to see whether your product is interesting for your set of customers that you are thinking that they will buy, you have to make sure that the landing page links goes to them, and then you have to make sure that the success is measured by, for example, within 3 days, if I get to these many signups, right? Or if the customers click on buy now even before I'm revealing the price, or if I put this price tag, for example, only when I'm saying it is $99, the customers are going and clicking on buy now. When I said $150, they are not clicking. So you can do variety of experiments depending on what you want to validate, right? But what you have to make sure is what is that you want to validate, which is coming from your assumption, And if you take that to customers, what do you believe that they will think? In this case, for example, if a stranger is advertising that there is a bet with me, and then another person can come share it, the air bed that I have in my apartment, such that you can get the local experience and also a cheaper accommodation, right? You are seeing whether there is an interest for such an idea, how many visitors are able to come in, and whether they are able to sign up or not, and what is the success that you will track for this metric, right? So that is very, very important to transform all your critical assumptions into a hypothesis statement which is measurable. By running experiments, you want to get results which are measurable. Right now, we look at the experiment. We talked a lot about the word experiment, the experiment loop, but we are going slightly detailed into what are those experiments and how we can you run these experiments, right? So we actually started with this idea. Now, with this idea, you have identified the assumptions, the leap of faith assumptions, prioritize the leap of faith assumptions, right? The ability to identify a set of experiments to prove those assumptions is a very, very critical exercise. That itself we can actually take a full session by itself. If any of you have, for example, after identifying your leap of faith assignment assumptions, if you have any questions around, for example, what can be that cheapest and fastest experiment that you can do to validate your loafers, feel free to contact me. I can help you with it. How can you arrive at your loafers? That is something you have to be very, very clear about on how can you run those critical experiments, right? And once you run these experiments, your ability to measure that and compare that, such that you are able to get to the ideal state, right? So the idea that you had out of brainstorming is not the ideal state. You get to that state only when you have run us the set of assumptions, making sure that all your assumptions, all your critical assumptions are tested. Only then you will be able to go to that ideal state to be a successful business from there on. Right. Some of the types of experiments, for example, all of these experiments just vary from like your any of your uh, prototypes, right? So it varies from your low fidelity, the low level details, just to verify the core concepts, to all the level to the high fidelity with having a great detail in place, right? So, for example, observe the testers using a sketch prototype. Just you are only sketching. If your idea has a big bet about simplifying the user experience, and hence the success of your idea. The idea itself is not unique, but you may be thinking that by providing that in a highly simplified fashion, it will help you solve the problem. And hence it is important for you to do a sort of a sketch prototype, such that you can very quickly verify whether this simplified experience can solve the problem or not. Or a fake out test, right? So a part of the experience will be fake. You'll be just acting it out. You'll be just enacting the such that this experience is there, but it is actually not there. And you are able to verify your core by doing that. The concierge test, right? The Flipkart story, for example, and several other startups for that matter, right? So when you actually place an order into the website, for example, there is no logistics, there is no the whole the logistic cycle in place, but a person just directly go and buys that product that you have placed an order for, and take it to your home for delivery, right? So the way to deliver the experience manually is the concierge test, right? And then the technical test, which is basically there are places, this is the only place where you can actually start with code, right? If your idea is actually betting on the ability of the technology to have for example, most of these cases, it's like a powerful algorithm. If you are thinking about an algorithm that no one else has, that can actually solve the problem, right? That is the place where you have to do a technology POC, such that to prove that concept, that you are able to technically make a difference, and hence build on top of that idea, right? Other than that, right? The technical POC does not come into picture for any other ideas where there is no algorithm to be proven, where there is no something that has never been done before by technology to be proven. You will not take the technical route. That is the ideal recommendation, right? And then going all the way to a fully built AB. A will also be fully functioning, B will also be fully functioning. There will be certain tweaks in terms of where the button is placed, or it can be two different ways of offering the same option to the customers, and you can see which one the customers are receiving better. I will also share some examples from Intuit side of how we did the A/B testing in production, for example, right? So this is the Airbnb FACO front-ended model of testing. When the Airbnb founders, the designers, and they had to go to the IDSA conference at San Francisco. They saw that a lot of the participants who are actually coming in for attending the conference, they are having difficulties in finding low-cost the accommodation, and hence they thought, what if they rented out the place where they are sharing, such that that can be later on, such that it gives them also the money, such that it helps them in their living expenses. At the same time, the participants are also able to have a cheaper accommodation to make sure that they are able to come and attend the event and go, and meanwhile they have a place to rest and refresh themselves, right? So it is just their living room. They just took it and made some landing page, and with the minimal explanation about that they want to that they are willing to share the space, and whether if the participants want to share and come in and take the airbed in their place, right? So that was how, for example, Airbnb started with. So this is another example that I had mentioned from Intuit side, the A/B testing, right? So in this case, imagine the password reset functionality, the API itself is already in place, right? Now it can be presented in two different ways to the customer, right? Which is the employees, the internal employees itself, right? You can have an app which is built over your API, such that if you get locked with the password, you come in here and use your employee ID such that you can reset your password. The other way is just have an SMS interface which tells that your user has been logged because of incorrectly trying the password, and if you want to unlock, just SMS unlock and we will take care of it, right? So that is the two interfaces to the same API that is behind the scenes, right? For the first interface, you have to go to iPhone app and download it and use it. The second interface, you don't have to download anything, it's just an SMS, right? Now with this whole app thinking world, right, that we have, a lot of us just think that if we build it out as an app, it solves the problem for everyone. That's the assumption that we actually go ahead with, right? But if you actually look at it, is not, because a password reset as a use case is not a frequently happening use case, right? For that, if I have to go to the app store and find an app and download it and then enter the ID and use it, then it is not a pain that I want to do it for that, right? Versus if I just receive an SMS, I reply to that SMS such that it helps me to reset the password, I'm already good, right? So that is what an AB test, a fully developed AB test of how you could have verified something. But this makes sure that it comes much later in your process. When you actually have the fully functioning things and you want to verify only the way of presentation. But otherwise, we wouldn't have even went on to the technical way of verification, as I was earlier calling out, when you are still in the early stages, right? Here is another thing where, for example, a team basically just tried their API call sequence. Imagine three systems just imitated by three folks who are standing, right? And the API call is actually acted out by a person going from one person to the other person, passing on that information, and then finally coming to the consumer with a set of information that is to be provided. Each of them playing the role, assuming is this the information that I want to get, give the information that he is asking for, such that you are able to explain the concept and also to see if there are any gaps in a model that you are envisioning, for example, right? These are some more examples of how we typically do. For example, in this case, for example, to see, instead of agent chatting experience, if you have to make an agent for the product support, if you have to make it as a face-to-face chat experience for agent, will it actually make difference with our customers, and how that can be, rapidly tested with, right? And then other example over here is basically, how can you draw out the screens very quickly such that you are able to take a set of screens just followed by a set of notes that you are able to open next to each other to show the set of screens such that you are able to, for example, show if the customer is able to interact with it, right? Now, okay, so we now come to the second quiz, right? So let me see, guys. Which of these following that you could actually do a rapid experiment or a prototype for? A new product idea, an item in your backlog, a meeting on your calendar. What can you actually quickly prototype or rapidly test to prove your assumptions, which is possible to do and which is not possible to do? I'm looking for answers. You can just use A, B, whichever is right, you can use that, A or B or C or D. Looking for your answers here. I see D, A, B. Tejas says C, Anis and D. Cool, go on. Perfect. Cool. A lot of you have actually got it right. You can almost experiment anything that you want to check. So it is actually all of the above, right? If that actually can help you learn, and if that is measurable, like if you could always recall the hypothesis template that we talked about, such that you are able to experiment and measure, and it is helping you to validate a critical value, then why not go for it, right? So, what is the rapid test actually helping you? It is helping you to go from the conjecture to the actuals, from an assumption or a belief or an opinion that you have, right? A lot, any idea that you have, if you have not validated it, it's just an opinion, right? So, from moving from there to having an actual data that is captured and that is proving out that this idea will work, is the state that we want you to get to. By doing rapid test, we want you to arrive there, right? So that is what is the key thing that I want you to take away from today's session, right? So what is a well designed experiment, right? And a well designed experiment, when you design an experiment, it is going you to help you to validate one or more critical or leap of faith assumptions, right? You have to make sure that you have called out very defined hypothesis. There is a measure put in place, and you have captured you have made sure that when this experiment runs, how are you going to capture the result of the experiments? Is there some qualitative angle to it by observing the customers, how are they using the product? Is there some quantitative angle to it by measuring the usage, by measuring the data of how they are using the product? That is very, very important, that you have all of this is already thought by you, such that what is the experiment, and how will that be measured, and the way to measure is also put in place, such that when it goes out, you are able to exactly track that and have the results, right? That is very, very important, right? And then the most important guiding principle for all of this is that your ability to make sure that you are able to run this experiment quickly and cheaply is the another most important thing that you have to make sure, right? Perfect. So with that, we are coming to the end of today's session. Here are some of the takeaways that I want you to really have deep in your mind, right? So if you have the perfect idea, rethink about it. Recognize and validate assumptions. Every idea has assumptions, right? uh, Most importantly, the critical assumptions or leap of faith assumptions, these can kill your business, right? Be mindful of them, recognize them, validate them, right? I have given you the 2 by 2 matrix, I have given you the hypothesis template. Use them within the next 2 days from this session, such that for your idea you are able to apply them and you are able to take it further from there, right? Have the right measures in place, right? And the measures should help you to learn and improvise or pivot. If you learn that your idea is not going in the right direction, you should be able to pivot. That's most important, right? Time box and money box your experiments, right? Both time and money is not free, is not available endlessly for anyone, right? So you have to, any experiment that you do, if you think no, it's only a week, probably I should change my measure again, I will wait for another 2 weeks to see whether it is happening right or not. No, right? So you have to already pre-decide, take into consideration what are some of these things, and then with that you would have already defined that, this is the time I want to run my experiment, and this is the money that I can max spend on this experiment, and within that I want to learn the following. So time boxing and money boxing, very important, right? Build incrementally, never build all the features together. We are validating your assumptions with some basic fake, the fastest way to build something cheaper and faster and get it to the customers to prove the assumptions, and then you will get into delivering the value by building something faster, and then you will incrementally add on value on top of those, such that your product will be finally built out to the stage where you want to go, the target state, right? Do not build everything at one shot and take it to the market, and do not become that one more statistic that we talk about, that, oh, okay, you are part of that 90% gang, that there was an application that was not used by the customers, and taken out from the app store within 1 year, after the late realization that it is actually not solving the market need, right? So this is all already in place. This is all something that the folks are already going through. It is, we have to make sure that we are not repeating this, and we are able to validate all our assumptions, and able to make sure that we are building incrementally, right? So any skill doesn't happen in one meeting, right? Any training, just one training, it is not going to turn it around. Here is Scott Cook, who is our co-founder, who is also an internationally famous executive coach who has coached several CEOs around the world, right? Skills are built over time with practice. It is not just what you learn from the training, it is not just what you learn from a book, right? It is something that is built over time with practice. So if you are worried that, how are you going to apply all of that, no need to worry. It just comes with practice. Once you have this as a practice, any idea that you think, automatically you will come into the mode of, okay, this is my idea, sounds good, so now I have to break it down into assumptions, and hence critical assumptions, and then I will validate one by one, and hence there will come my brilliant idea, right? So that is the direction that you will start to go automatically, right? So that's the end of today's session. I want you guys to go do amazing things, right? Go for it. You have already taken a leap to come into the startup world. Go do amazing things, right? And that was me. And you can find me in the links, or just Google for my full name, and you will find all my articles and all my social presence. Thank you, everyone.
So,
We can now open up for questions.
yeah, thank you, Muthuraj. We have some questions. So,
Sure.
let me begin. So, how this is a question from Tejas Phase. How assumptions can be made at first? Do we need to conduct a preliminary survey for our target market?
Write down your solution statement, right? For example, in Airbnb case, a platform which can connect the folks who are willing to offer or willing to share their airbed with the strangers, and hence the consumers are able to use that accommodation offered in a stranger's place, but because this is offered by a local person, right? And it is cheaper, I will go and make use of it and stay there. Right now, this is your, if you describe your idea in 2 3 sentences, this will be the main things that you're looking at. This is the platform. When you It is like a pitch statement for your platform. If I ask you, what are you trying to solve, when you write that down, and when you go word by word, sentence by sentence there, you will already start to see that there are assumptions behind each of this. We are talking about folks, having the ability, we are talking about firstly an internet only platform, which means we are assuming that customers will have a phone or a device to go to internet to book it. And then we are talking about, for example, the customers are able to book this accommodation through internet. There will be several assumptions, right? But then there are some of these are validated assumptions, like for example, having internet, having a device with which you can use internet. These are validated assumptions for the market that you are targeting, because you are targeting a market which is basically an established city, right? A metro city, where there is a lot of folks who are coming in either for tourism purpose or for business purpose, and they are in search, consistent search for a low cost accommodation. And hence, some of these assumptions are already validated, hence you can go on to the critical ones. And for finding the critical ones, this is the one I had earlier mentioned in the session, to have you have a screenshot for you. Make sure that you are able to plot all your assumptions here and find your crucial ones.
So yeah. So next question is, can we start with PWA for our MVP?
What do you mean by that? If you could give some more qualifiers to that question, if you can tag
Uh,
that person, probably we can
Lakshmi, can
get more thing.
you use the raise hand feature by the time we answer the next question?
Yeah,
Lakshmi,
so Lakshmi, that is fine. Progressive web app is fine. So I would like to understand your question further. What would you like to understand better? Like if you can explain in couple of sentences any specific example and what you are looking for. Meanwhile, I see a question from Saurabh. How to do hypothesis on physical product with complementing to test market concept. Like as I mentioned, say for there are different types that we saw. Like for these ones that we saw, right? Uh, like for example, if you look at a lot of these hardware products or the physical products, that also falls in the technical, more or less the technical category, where you are talking about a new product itself, and that product has to be firstly proven. The feasibility of building that product itself has to be proven, right? That means you do have to do that technology work or the manufacturing work such that you are able to produce that. That yes, you will have to do that, but you will also do that in conjunction with some of the other things. Like for example, even before you go ahead and do that, uh, can you actually validate that there is such a need in the market for such a product by having some 3D diagrams, for example, or doing a 3D print, or only the look and feel of how that would be, and then explaining that to the potential customers in a way they will understand that concept, right? So such that you can validate the need before doing the what we call as a high fidelity or a high touch work. Any of the high touch work, you have to be really careful, because you are going to spend a lot of time and energy, and if it later gets proven that it is not something that the market is requiring, then you may have a bigger problem. Like for example, if Google's biggest USP is their, let's say, the page ranking algorithm, such that when the keywords are searched, the the highest ranked ones or the most relevant ones are appearing at the top. Yes, there is a very, very high dependency for you to prove that whether can you have such an algorithm that can actually bring only the relevant results at the top, and it can actually scale when the web pages are growing, and terabytes and petabytes of data are added every day. Yes, absolutely, you have to write that algorithm and prove that it is technically working. uh, but at that point, because there are not many other competitors who can do it, they were able to crack it, right? But in today's market, if you see the relevancy, even before doing that algorithm, is there something that you can parallelly do? For example, is there a need for getting that fast result? Right, that has to be also if that idea has to happen in today's concept, you have to also prove that there is a need for such a thing before you actually go ahead and build it out in the coded way. So
Yeah.
that's
So
the other one. Yeah, go on,
the
Rehan.
other is by Raja Kumar, Code Doctor. What is the outcome of experiment? Is it binary, go ahead or go no? Or is there third option? We may need to do the same experiment once again in context of different time.
Okay, that's a good question. So, like for example, like the one that we had here, what does a well-defined experiment mean? For example, right? So, um, you are going to have the measure in place, and you are going to have the result in place, and once you are going to have the results that is coming in for your quantitative elements. It is most of the time, for example, if you had defined, for example, the product usage metrics as your metrics, right? Then a lot of this is actually more or less like a binary, right? For example, you are looking at a minimum of 1,000 users to be coming in one day, right? But you have got for such an idea, you have got only 100 users. Now this is a very binary answer, right? So you were expecting a minimum, you have already put a minimum number, and you are not hitting that minimum number, since it's directly a no. You will know, as in, it's not that the whole thing has completely failed. You may want to tweak it slightly for the refine the way how it was done, and you can actually done a different experiment, or you can move on to your next experiment, right? But if you look at the qualitative angle to it, that is not fully defined, right? In there is a lot of cases where by what is happening, by understanding what is happening, and understanding the behavior of the customers, you will have to come back, tweak the experiment and do it, right? So it's a combination of binary plus tweaking the experiment also wherever there is qualitative measures in place. So, Arihan, do we have any
Yeah,
other questions?
we have one more question. So that is a raise hand. I'm giving the privilege, and he wants to ask you directly. So I think it's
Sure,
Lakshmi only. So I think you've answered her question, but one second. Since the raise hand option is still there.
sure.
Yeah, hello, Muthuraj. You are able to hear me?
Yeah,
Hello.
Lakshmi, go on.
Yeah. So my question is, I had asked about the PWA. So sometimes what happens is once we have validated the idea, we know that there is a user, all that. Then we have to build the technology product. Now, many times what happens is sometimes like building an iPhone application or an Android takes a lot of money. It's a completely different thing. So of late, I've been like looking at the PWA. So I get varying. So that's like a market itself. Looking at it, so I'm not really able to figure out like okay, but it's very economical to build. Is that something that we can build? Uh, Try it out, do experiments on that, and then once we know build an iPhone application. What are your thoughts on generally how people tend to do this? Mine is a consumer application, actually in the health tech space.
Okay, so yours is a consumer application, which is fine. Okay, in the health tech space. In that space, what is your specific question here? You are in the stage where you have validated your idea and you have your first version already live in the market. Is that right?
No, our first version is not live in the market. We
Okay.
are building the machine learning algorithm, and
Okay.
we are thinking of. I mean, we're doing the screens and making the tech and testing it and all that. Now, how do we go to market? Uh, there are three options for us. One, we do a PWA, and then we do an Android app, or we do a uh, you know an Apple, I mean, iPhone kind of app. Now, if we do both, all the three is going to be very expensive. We need to start somewhere. So people tell us that I'm a non-tech guy. So people tell us that that the PWA is not a great way to actually start. People don't. But reading, I found out that there are a lot of people, and my market is in the Western countries. Uh, so basically in the US, that's where we are starting. So
Hmm.
so I thought I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, not that we don't want to build the
See,
app, we would
see,
want some case to
basically,
experiment.
absolutely fine. See, basically, a PWA versus a native Android app or an iOS app is basically a technology question, right? So, which technology that you want to use to build out your application, right? So that is a let's say a technology question. But if you are looking at, for example, you will have to go back to what is your core value that you want to offer to the customers, right? The absolute core value that you think that you are going to offer, which is going to disrupt the market, right? And for that core value, what are the assumptions? And if you tell me some of the assumptions, right, and then only to validate, for example, if your core value is one specific core value if you have identified, and if there are set of assumptions, and if one of that assumptions is basically whether customers are able to download such an app and and use it and get value out from it, right? Only if your experiment is saying that, and most of the time the experiments is not going to say that, right? So that is where I'm still trying to understand.
So can I
Are
tell
you
you? Yeah,
already
I
at
can. I can tell you that if you have
right?
a couple of seconds, I can tell you. So what we're trying to do is we have built a machine learning algorithm that can actually scan dental pictures, take pictures, and give out insights of cavity and tooth plaque and all that. So it's like a self-check application. And the experiment, what we're trying to establish is that people are comfortable first taking the pictures of their teeth. So that's the first level experiment that we're trying to look
Okay,
at.
so what I would have done in this case, okay, is basically doing, for example, a very simple multi-platform sort of a technology, which is, let's say, for example, in this case, it could be a PWA, or it could be even, for that matter, for example, a FACO front end would be here, would be just that you create a landing page where there is an ability to upload your picture or create a WhatsApp group where you can send a picture, right? Now when the users upload such a picture, you take that picture to actually a dentist and get it verified. For example, with that picture, you are able, if they are able to identify what is wrong with that, and then send that response back to the customers, right? Now what is happening, you are actually validating whether they are actually able to even upload, whether they are comfortable taking a picture of their tooth, for example, and send out to the internet, and whether you are able to provide a value back to them with just a picture itself, right? That can either happen by a concierge, which is you directly going to a doctor, or by having a very minimal algorithm in place which detects some yearly sequence from the picture, and you are able to send that information back to your customer, right? But what I would not do is, I would not build a full-fledged machine learning algorithm and have a completely built Android or an iOS app as a front end for it, and take that to the customer, and then see whether he is comfortable uploading his picture or not. Because the here it's a core assumption. If the users are not comfortable taking the own picture of their tooth and upload, then the idea will fail. Right. So for that, the easiest way, I would have started it via a landing page or a WhatsApp, and make sure that whether they are
Yeah,
first able to
so
upload the
Muthuven,
picture.
we did that, and people were comfortable. Many of them, hundreds of them, send us pictures, and we during this COVID time, that's what we were doing. What I wanted to know was that in my progression towards doing the next part of it, uh, is it
What
fine?
is the
Is my
next
thought process
hypothesis? What is the next hypothesis you want to validate?
whether people are willing to download the application and then put the pictures within the application?
Uh, Okay, going to an application and then willing to download that application. Okay, so in that case, if that is what is your next critical assumption, and if you have made sure of it in terms of, we talked about. Let me go there in terms of you know. Um, if this is something from the set of assumptions, if this is something that you have made sure is your next critical assumption, and that is critical for you, yes, you can go ahead and do that. To start with, do it as a cross platform application only, because when you do it, some of these cross platform applications like the PWAs and several other the web apps, right, provides you infrastructure for doing applications in a faster way. It's like a web page deployed inside an application itself. So you will be able to develop it faster, where you have an ability to upload the picture and get a response back to those, send those response back to the customer, so you can test it there. So that
Yeah,
is
that's right. Yeah.
yes, if that, only if that is a critical assumption. So I'm not going into detail there, but I still doubt whether that is a critical assumption, right? So there may be others. Do this exercise and put it in your 2 by 2 and make sure whether that is your critical this one before
Yeah,
proceeding.
there are some more whether they're able to how they take the pictures, more of technical parts to it.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, just make sure that you are in further, you have taken this right step, right?
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much, Muthu.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot. Thanks a lot.
So we have one more question. Uh,
Sure.
so from Raja Kumar. So he's also raised hand. So I'm giving access.
Sure.
So I think there are some connectivity issues at his end. So it's not being. Yeah. So thank you, Muthu, for such an engaging session, and we really enjoyed in terms of participation, in terms of knowledge enrichment, and thank you for your time. And it was a good engagement with the startup ecosystem, and we look forward to having you again. Thank you, participants, for making such a wonderful session, AMA session. So we look forward to the next AMA very soon, and also do not forget to attend our India Retail Tech NASCOM Retail Tech Day, the link of which has been shared in the chat box. It's on 29th and 30th of September. So this is the second edition, and on popular demand, we are doing this, and we are having a lot of international global leaders from across the world to address this. So thank you, Muthu. Thank you, participants. We look forward to meeting you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Arihan. Thank you, NASCOM, for holding this interesting session. Thank you, participants. I hope you had some good takeaways from the session. Feel free to post for any questions, and then happy to answer them. Thank you. Thanks a lot.